So tonight, it's really special to have Ryan here tonight. Just a little bit of my backstory and how we met. So when I came into the program, some of you know my story. I was a pastor in Nashville. I came to this program, and my relationship with God was complicated at best because I had been pretending and manipulating all these things. And then when I had my, big public implosion, it was tough, right? And I definitely had a complicated relationship with the church for sure. And then the thing with my relationship with God was just like, I don't even know what's what. And so I had a really tough conversation with God at Foxfield where I was just like, God, I'm not out on you yet, but I definitely gonna have to hit the reset button. I got to start over. Grew up in the church, pastor's kid, the whole deal. Was a pastor for 20 years, and I was like, I don't even know what I believe anymore. And I just and God really met me in that place, and it's been a beautiful journey for me since then. But while I was here, Peyton said, hey, I want you to go try this church with me. And I was like, that is the last thing I want to do on the planet is go to a church right now. Like, there's just no way. But because I love Peyton, I trust him. He's like, trust me, this is way different. And I think it was on a Saturday night, maybe. Mm-hmm. So it was just, and I will tell you, I walked into Free Recovery Community, and I was like, it was emotional for me because I was like, this is what I had hoped church could be for me, because it was so honest, and you guys were celebrating people's recovery and celebrating just, people were just free to share what was going on in their life. And really for me, it wasn't until I got here at Valiant and in some other rooms that that in some ways became church for me. It became the place where I could confess and I could be honest and I could have community. And growing up in the church, I never experienced it at that level. So anyways, I walked in, I experienced Free Recovery Community and was just blown away, goosebumps. Fletch went with me that night, and we both were dealing with just religious trauma stuff, and it just was a really beautiful experience. And so I met Ryan that night, but then just recently reached out to him again, and we just became real fast friends. And I just appreciate you and appreciate what you're leading over there. A lot of you guys have been involved with Free and go over there. So I was like, let's have him come and just kind of talk to us specifically around this. I want to hear your story too and kind of how you got to where you're at. But I also want to create a space here where we can maybe go to some places that might be even a little uncomfortable, because you can handle it. You live in this space.
I thought we didn't do discomfort.
But if you're like me, and maybe your relationship with your higher power is you're locked in, but if you're like me, when you go through crisis, man, it just really makes you question a lot of things. And I would imagine with however many people are in this room right now, we're probably in all very different places when it comes to just spirituality and the God thing and everything else. So just know on the front end, this isn't a preachy, churchy, beat you over the head with the Bible talk. This is us saying, when we experience pain and we experience hardship and things like that, that spirituality is important, but it's also complicated, and we need to have places like Free with pastors like Ryan who permission us to ask the hard questions and permission us to journey wherever we're at in the process. And so really grateful for you. So can we just welcome Ryan for being here tonight?
Thank you.
Yeah. Make sure, you're good. Tell us a little bit about just your story. You're in recovery. Love to hear a little bit of your recovery story.
Yeah. So, I got sober January 7th of 2013. And I'll just give a little backstory. Cut me off if you need.
No.
What time we got till?
Till 7.
Okay.
And I love them to have some time for questions too.
So I'll just give
to 8.
brief
I'm still
backstory.
on Central Time.
First, being an alcoholic was never supposed to be me, in my mind. My brother, who was 3 years older than me, he was the addict and alcoholic in the family, and good Christian family, church-going family, and he was in and out of the county jail. I could never understand him. He was my best friend, but I was so angry at him, and I would go into that jail to visit him in that orange suit, and I'd say, dude, why can't you just get it together? Why can't you just stop? I didn't understand addiction. I didn't understand it was a problem of the mind. Look at all the shame you're bringing into our family. Look at how mom's heart is breaking, and you're doing this. Just stop. Get your shit together, He got clean and sober when I was in high school. Later in high school, he got clean and sober, stayed clean and sober. He went to a treatment, stayed clean and sober for about a year and a half. I went off to Bible school when I graduated high school. I wanted to be a pastor. I wanted to do what youth group did for me in youth group. And I never felt like I belonged as a kid from the age of 5 years old on. And I had traumatic experiences that some of you all have mentioned tonight. And I never felt like I belonged. And I felt like you all got something that I didn't get. Like I missed that day of school where you all got it. And I missed how to do relationships. I missed how to do life. Anyway, I graduate, go to Bible school, this place. I'm from Missouri, went up to Michigan, a place I'd never been. And I was there for 1 month, so I didn't know anyone there, wasn't connected yet. And my mom called me, I'll never forget it. And she said, Ryan, you need to come home. Brandon's been killed in a car accident. And man, that was a moment for me. He relapsed, and he was the drunk driver. So when we say this disease or addiction kills, it's a very real thing. But that was a moment for me where this God that I was so close to just crumbled. This God that I had given my life to, I felt so abandoned by this God. Everything I believed was called into question, and I didn't know how to say that. I didn't know how to admit that to anyone because it would create shame in my life. I didn't pick up my first drink until I was 16 years old. And I was the good kid in high school. I was a leader in the church youth group. He was the bad kid, I was the good kid. But I picked up a drink when I was 16. It started the same way it ended. It started in isolation, no one was around. And man, when it was Bacardi rum, when it hit my mouth, I remember thinking, this is the best. I did not know this was available. This feeling that just hit my body, it was amazing to me. And why is the church, why are my Christian friends, why are they keeping this from me? We should all be doing this. It took away shame in my life. It made me feel good. It gave me a sensation I didn't know existed. But I had so much shame being raised in a church and being raised in religion that I couldn't admit to anyone that I liked it. So some of my youth group friends found out. And I would have to lie to him and say, oh man, I hated it. It was awful. I was in the backyard puking and I was a blackout drunk from my very first drink. So I tried to act like I didn't like this thing. Some time passes and I only drank probably 5 other times in high school, early college. Once my brother died, this like the opposite of a miracle happened, right? I picked up right where he left off, and how that happened, it's absolutely baffling to me that I went down the road that I hated. I became the thing that I was so fearful of.
Wow.
That's getting sober. You know, I went on and I became a pastor.
Yeah, tell us about that. So I'm curious, how did you go from that moment? And because I've got so many questions around this idea of pain and how pain can sometimes be a catalyst or trauma, into that. But walk us through that journey of like, how did you get sober? And then I'd love to even hear your calling into the ministry world.
When I went to college, went to Christian University, got my biblical studies degree. Got a DUI in college. I was in a Christian university. Got married right out of college. Went straight to seminary. On the outside, my life looked good. On the outside, you could look at me and say, man, he's got it together. He's headed places. On the inside, I hated myself. On the inside, I didn't know how to cope with feelings. I didn't know. I heard tonight some of you men talk about this experience of we get to feel again. In recovery, you get to feel again. Man, I relate with that. I didn't know how to feel. When feelings came up, I pushed them aside because I didn't know how to deal with it. So I get married, I get appointed as a pastor in a church. I'm an ordained United Methodist pastor, and my life is falling apart. My inner life is falling apart, and things on the outside are starting to fall apart. And I was in so much fear. People, my closest friends, family members were saying to me, hey, you drink a lot. You might need to get help. You're doing this, you're doing that. I had a 2.5-year-old daughter at the time. I have 4 kids now. 2.5-year-old daughter at the time. When my wife would go out of town, I would leave my daughter in her crib to leave the house and go drink the way I wanted to drink. This was survival mode for me. The day I got sober, in 2013. I'll never forget it. My wife, Tammy, came down the stairs. I was passed out on the couch again because that's what we alcoholics do. And I hear her upstairs. It was like early in the morning, 6 o'clock. And I hear her starting to come down, and I pop off the couch really quick to make it look like I'm good. We got our shit together. And man, she probably did this 100 other times, but this day it stuck with me. It was like we talk about the GOD, the gift of desperation. And she was standing on the stairs, and she was holding this empty bottle of vodka, and she was crying, and she said, "Ryan, what are we gonna do?" And for whatever reason, I heard that word "we," and I knew I wasn't alone. And man, that was the day, that pain you talk about. And I had no intention of that being a profound moment in my life.
Right.
And yet that was the day I could see, and I need help. Everything I value and love the most is crumbling. And I don't want to live that way.
So walk us through how you got to like starting free and just the idea and the vision behind that, because it's such a radical approach to doing, church. I don't even know if you use that word, but it's very different.
Some people call it a church, and some people are like, "What are you talking about? This isn't a church.
Right.
This is my recovery community, or this is my tribe, my people." And I really don't care what people call it. We care what we do there and what people experience. But the short story is, I stayed silent in my recovery for 3 years. I didn't want anyone to find out. I attended AA meetings, but I drove all the way across town because I didn't want anyone to see me. I was so scared of what people would think of me being a pastor and in recovery. I thought I would lose my career. I had all this fear and shame that I was covered in. With working with some mentors and a sponsor in my life, I decided to go public with my story from the pulpit on a Sunday morning at all 3 worship services, and I was shaky, and I shared my story, and I was met with a lot of love and grace, and that was surprising to me. But more surprising was that next day, that Monday morning, my email box was flooded, and it was from people in the community saying, "Hey, I struggle too. How'd you put down the bottle?" Or "My brother or sister struggle, mom or dad, son or daughter." And I get to church the next Sunday, and I'm looking out at the people, and I thought, "Oh my goodness, we have a huge problem." You are struggling with the same thing of the person sitting next to you. You've been sitting next to each other for years, and you don't know it because we have this problem of silence with addiction because it's covered up in shame. And I just looked out and I saw how many people were struggling. And that started us on a journey. I woke up my wife in the middle of the night one night. It was April 3rd, 2018. That's my birthday. And I said, "Honey, what if we start a place for addicts like me and loved ones of addicts, people like you and what we call spiritual refugees, people who have been so burned by religion, they were told they don't belong with the God stuff, they've been either kicked out of church or they know they don't belong there. What if we start a place for them?" And she told me to go back to sleep. It was in the middle of the night. But this drum was beating inside of me, and I couldn't shut it off. And that was in April. By June of that year, we just opened up our backyard. I was still serving as full-time pastor, but on Saturday nights, we opened up our backyard for anyone who wanted to talk about recovery, spirituality, the God stuff. And our backyard started to fill up really quickly, like in 4 weeks. And we were like, we don't know what to do. And we just planned on doing 4 weeks. And someone, after that 4 weeks is over, someone's like, "What do we do next?" And I was like, "No, I hadn't thought about that." And we went full time within a month after that. It grew very quickly.
And how is free, if someone hasn't been there, how do you explain it? Like, how is it different? I know how I experienced it, but I'll let you go first. But it was very different for me. And I've been in just about every kind of church you can imagine growing up.
One, I think it's different because I've actually been there. I've been transformed by the honesty that I found in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, and that people could share so freely and openly their heart. And we're bound together through our suffering, through our lowest points in life. That was an amazing thing I experienced in recovery. So I've been there, and I crave this honesty and to create spaces where that can happen. What makes it different is we are a community for, and we say it's on every piece of literature. We say it every Saturday night. We're a community for addicts, loved ones of addicts, and spiritual refugees. And our tagline is, we don't do shame. Because the number of people, and myself included, man, I could not figure out how to leave the church parking lot and turn right to go home instead of turning left to go to the liquor store. It baffled me. And I didn't want anyone to ever find out about this. I didn't want to be seen. I didn't want to be known. Because my thinking was, if you know me, if God really knows me, God's not going to want me.
Right.
And so I'm unworthy. I start from a place of shame. The number of people that come in with stories of shame and fear around being loved and worthy, it's damn near everybody. And if we can break down those barriers, that's what we try to do. And we celebrate. We celebrate those milestones. I have a friend, we get to see so much light and so much celebration, but I have a friend who reminds me, he says, Ryan, you're like pastoring a psych ward. I mean, this is like the triage, because there is so much pain in this place. And just in the last 2 weeks, we've had 5 fentanyl deaths. I just met with a family yesterday who lost their 32-year-old son. There's pain that comes with addiction, but there's also that front row seat to God's miracles that happen all the time.
All right, so let's dive into a couple things real quick, because here's what I'm curious about. When pain happens, you've experienced extreme trauma and pain in your life. What do you say to the people who carry this? God, where were you? Like, where were you? Like, you're supposed to be good, you're supposed to be loving, you're supposed to be all these things that I've heard, but that's not how I experience you. I didn't get the miracles like some people got. I didn't get, it just feels like, for whatever reason, and I know this is a very difficult question I'm asking you, but for whatever reason, it just feels like, God, you've had your thumb on me the whole time. If you even exist, you're definitely not good. Because if you were good, I wouldn't be going through what I'm going through, or I've experienced that. And so how do you begin to start helping someone unpack all that? Because it's a lot.
I think back to what I needed in times of when my brother died. That was a very traumatic moment in my life. And we prayed to God for years that he would be saved from addiction. And I thought God would do that. And then God did it, and then he dies. It was such a feeling of betrayal. What I needed, I remember going to a Bible school class within a couple of weeks after his death. And I was asking real questions, the questions you were just asking. And they were real questions for me. And the professor told me, it sounds like you just want to justify your leaving. It sounds like you just want to get out of this. And I thought, dude, these are honest questions. What are you? And it was like, again, shame producing for me. When people come into free with their deepest pain and their deepest questions, I don't think they're looking for answers. Because there's not really an answer. If I could say, well, this is why that happened. Would any answer really suffice in that moment? No, I think what we're looking for is someone to say, like my sponsor, when I did my 5th step, I share all the shit, and I think he's going to come at me, and he says, me too. That was so freeing for me. When we can just sit with people in their pain and say, that hurts. That's darkness. And in fact, you read through the Psalms. Psalms are in the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, just ancient poems and prayers. They're constantly crying out, God, where are you? God, why'd you do this? How long are we going to suffer? So we try really hard at Free to create space where the questions are welcome. And we don't feel the need to answer all the questions, because some questions, they're not answerable. Some questions, it's like, I don't know. So I've gotten really comfortable with that response.
I don't know.
I don't know. Why'd he die? I don't know. There's real pain in the world. I don't know.
Well, it's interesting as you're talking, I was thinking about, a lot of times we get hit with the Sunday school churchy answers for things, but I love how you drew that out, because that's just not even how we see God responding to people oftentimes in Scripture. Because I think of like Elijah when he was battling depression. I mean, God basically said, you need a steak and a nap. I mean, that's my paraphrase, but that's basically what he said. Whereas we'd be like, you got to pray harder, or you just give it over to God, or you got to surrender. And God was like, man, when's the last time you slept? Like, when's the last time you had a good meal? It's like, even God is not giving the churchy answers that sometimes we try to jam down people's throat they just fall short. When you hit that wall, or like our Catholic brothers and sisters call it the dark night of the soul, that at some point everyone goes through. Hopefully they go through, because you talked about the gift of desperation. It's like you look back and you're like, man, I'm so glad I hit that wall, because I would have never got to the other side without it. But that's what I love about what you're doing. And I think what even Valiant wants to do is create spaces for questions and to explore these things. But I'm curious, because I want to go back to, and then I want you guys to ask questions here. I want to make sure we have it. Are we good on time? How much time do we have left? I just want to make sure there's space for your questions. But before we get to that, can you talk about shame a little bit more? That's something I really related to when you said that. Yeah. I was pastoring big church, looked like I was crushing on the outside, but I felt like there was nobody in my life I could tell who I was struggling, because it was going to cost me my job, or it was just all these shame narratives were happening. How did you kind of battle through that? And can you just encourage us around how do we approach this idea of shame, specifically when it comes to how God may feel about us as we're going through stuff?
So my first approach to it was, and I don't recommend this approach, on that morning, January 7th, when Tammy said those words to me, I said, you know what, honey, you're right. I'm going to call our counselor. We had a marriage counselor we were working with a few years prior. I'm going to call our counselor. And it's not like I consciously went through this thought, but what was underneath it all was, no one can find out about this. So if I can just do this one-on-one with a counselor, and I never have to tell you, the congregation never has to find out, family, friend, they never have to find out, I'm going to work through this one-on-one. And she essentially, thank God for good therapists, she said, get your ass to an AA meeting. She wouldn't even see me, the therapist. She said, not until you get some support. So I know that feeling of shame. What it says is, stay in fear. Your best option is hiding. It's that internal nagging voice that says, if they really see you, you're not gonna measure up. You're not gonna be worthy. And I had all these messages from the time I was a kid, so they stuck with me. This is how you survive. You stay in the background. What I found was, in recovery, this amazing thing happened, and I was so scared to go into a 12-step meeting. I mean, to get me, I remember sitting in my red Toyota pickup truck, like just gripping the wheel, thinking, God, there's got to be another way out of this. And then going in there and finding a community of people that had been there, and they talked about it in honest ways, and they talked about it in ways of, man, they couldn't stop either. I thought I was the only one, like, God, why can't I stop? And I tried so many different methods, like get rid of white liquor and go to brown liquor. Don't drink on Saturday nights because you got to preach on Sunday morning. Like, I tried all these things and they always failed. And when I heard other people tell their story, I was like, oh, that was me. And then you learn how to start opening up with other people, because these people loved me when I didn't know how to love myself.
Right.
So, and then when it started working in my faith, because I had a God who I was certain was always disappointed in me. Here's Ryan, you were going to be a great Christian leader, and instead, look at you, you're an alcoholic.
I was about to ask you, can you talk more about that? Like, for someone who might be saying, there's no way, like, God has to be disappointed or even pissed at me, because there's no way, because of what I've done or because of who I've hurt, or if you knew my story, there's no way that God could not be disappointed in me.
Are you all going to be disgruntled if I tell one Bible story? I promise I won't get preachy.
Bible thumper.
I shouldn't have even said it's from the Bible. I could tell the story, and I think
you've already cussed 3 times before you said a Bible story, so I think you're in the clear. Yeah, it's fine.
Don't tell my mom.
No, I love it. So you've already equaled it out, so you're good.
All right, good.
Just one though.
In Luke's gospel, there's a beautiful story, and this is one of our foundational stories at Free. It's a story that's often referred to as the Prodigal Son. I mean, you know this story. I love this story because, and I didn't understand it until I got into recovery. I did not understand it. I think you'll relate to it. You'll understand it without even commentary. So there's a younger son, older son, a father. The younger son goes to the father and says, "Pops, I wish you were dead so I could have my money, my inheritance money," and which is really offensive, by the way, because you're saying, "Dad, I wish you were dead so I could have the money." He says, "Take it, it's yours." The younger son says, "Great." He takes the money, he goes off and blows it on prostitution. It's not in the text, but probably drugs and alcohol, whatever else was available, all the things we would have blown it on. And he runs out of money, and life starts to suck for him. And he says, man, what I wouldn't do to go back home. He doesn't have another couch to surf on. He's squandering with the pigs. I mean, he's lost it all. He's at what we would call a bottom. And he says, the text says, I have no other options. If I go home, he's gonna take me back, but only as a hired hand, a servant. But I have no other options, so I'm gonna go back home. And the story says, while the son was still a long way off, the father comes out, and if you're a bit fuzzy, the father represents God in the story. The father comes out to greet him. So I imagine this father running down the driveway because he's been looking out the window every night to see if his boy is coming home. And on this morning, it's actually true. He runs down the driveway and it says, greets him with a hug and compassion. He starts yelling to the neighbors, quick, get all the party supplies. We're going to have a big party. And the son says to him, Dad, I don't deserve this, man. Do you know what I just did with the money? Did you see my life? Wait till you hear everything I've done. And he says, nonsense. My boy was lost, and now he's home again, and we must celebrate. And that is fundamentally how I look at every addict, alcoholic, and whatever the addiction is, and recovery. It is a coming home experience. Mm-hmm. And I always thought God was, okay, God, you're going to give me a little bit of punishment, right? Mm-hmm. What's my punishment in recovery? Mm-hmm. And instead what I get is gift after gift after gift, and there's no shame in that. Yeah. That's unconditional love. When I can sit last night with dude, you talked about having kids, and I heard you, and I related with that story. When I could sit with my 8-year-old boy last night and my 5-year-old boy, and we're sitting on the couch watching the Nuggets game because the altitude channel has been restored by Xfinity after 6 years. Didn't cause me a resentment at all. When I'm sitting on the couch, I still have 12 years sober. Wow. And I still have these moments like, oh my word, it's all just a gift that I could do this, that I could be a pastor of a community where I can be honest, where I can live in integrity, where I don't have to be fearful. Tammy tonight, she forgot I was coming here. She texted me, where are you? When are you coming home? I said, I'm at Valiant tonight. She said, oh yeah, I forgot. She did not have to wonder if I was at a bar or at a liquor store or drinking somewhere where I had to stay in hiding. Man, those are gifts I have today in recovery. Yeah,
it's beautiful, man. I love that. What's coming up for you guys? What questions do you have? Comments? I'd just love to hear from you because I got a lot stirring in me, but I don't want to hog the time.
You mentioned like Free's a place for spiritual refugees. I'm sure a lot of people come in with some trauma associated with the church or other organized religion. How do you begin to like help heal that trauma, like as a pastor and community leader?
Yeah. So our mission is literally creating space, and we take that very seriously. We create space for that to happen. So we're never threatened, and I as a pastor am never threatened by someone who says, you know what, I don't do the Bible thing. I don't do someone told me just the other day, hey, you're helping me not hate Jesus so much. And I'm like, I didn't know people hated Jesus. I knew people hated the church. But to say the fear, the anger, the disillusionment with the church or religion, yeah, I get it. And it's welcomed here. We don't want to stay in anger. We don't want to stay. I had to learn in my recovery, staying in resentment is not helpful. Religion and Christianity was on my 4-step list for resentments all over the place. Yeah, I mean, religious leaders, institution, and I tell the story often that I had to leave behind a God. I had to let God die in my recovery so that a new God could be rebirthed, resurrected. Mm-hmm. So I think when we create the space for those questions, and when they see you're serious about it, that I don't try to. We have a Dharma group in our facility, and I love that we can welcome in other spiritual paths because I don't believe that there's just one right spiritual path. We're all on a path, and I tell people, find what works for you. Find what connects you to something bigger than you. Your God doesn't have to look like my God, but it's probably not going to work very well if you're the God.
Right. That doesn't work. Can't be you. Yeah.
But we have lots of. I think that just culturally, lots of people have been burned by religion. They've been burned by religious leaders. And when we say, that's a very real thing, instead of trying to cover it up and say, oh, we're not like them. We're not part of that.
Mm-hmm. It's good. It's a good question. Thank you. Anybody else have anything?
So I was at Free for the football game the other night, and was just curious about, because I know it's not just a church, it's a center for people. It sounds like you offer a lot of meetings for people,
Yeah.
places for people to meet, AA meetings and things like that. And
Yeah.
what else, what other kind of programs do you use your facility for?
So we have a cafe. You were I remember talking to you at the cafe. Our cafe is open throughout the week, 9 to 9, because again, our mission is to create space. So to create space where people can hang out, where like-minded people can gather, where you can meet with fellow people in recovery, and that's loved ones and the ones battling addiction. We have over 40 meetings now throughout the week. So every single day of the week, there's AA meetings, NA meetings, Al-Anon, and not just 12-step meetings, all kinds of recovery meetings. But we've learned a great value in partnering with other organizations. So like we partner with the Phoenix to host sober open mic nights every other month. Just creating sober space for things like the Super Bowl, when we know that's a tempting time for lots of people. That's when we really went out to drink the way we wanted to drink. So how do we create space for people to stay sober on those days where they really struggle? Partnering with CARE, Colorado Artists in Recovery. Their office is inside our building. So we do art shows with them, trauma-informed yoga, ways that are, we have a trauma therapist on site. Her office is down the hallway across from the cafe. So it's not just healing. The group settings are good. I love the group settings. But there's other fun things to do in recovery, and I had to learn that. I thought getting sober, life was going to be boring. How do you ever go on vacation again? Why go to a beach ever? So I had to learn recovery can be fun. So creating those fun events is part of what we do.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So cool. Back here.
Yeah, do you have any plans to expand or add additional locations?
Yes. Man, it's almost like that was a planted question. Yeah, so as a board of directors, we have a board, we're a nonprofit. We did some visioning last year, and we came up with a vision through a long process, but we wanted to keep it simple, 10 new frees in 10 new locations in 10 years. So we don't want to move fast, but we have Free Recovery Community Chicago launching this fall. There's a team out there working on things and putting a leadership team together. We're in conversation with San Diego right now, some leaders in San Diego, because we think we found something that really works, and we don't want to be, I don't know if y'all are familiar with the mega church movement, just get thousands of people in the stadium. We want it to be relational, because there's something really cool that happens when we can get in a room and celebrate together and be honest with our heartaches. So yeah, that is happening, and if you have any ideas, I'm all open. What's that?
I'm a Denver guy.
You're, okay. Yeah, so Denver and Chicago certainly on, and like I said, we're in conversation with some others. We're hosting a 2-day summit in April for leaders who are interested in starting a new thing, because we had to learn a lot. I mean, if you ever start something new, it's like the funnest thing you'll ever do, the most scary thing you'll ever do, and it's like drinking from a water hose, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is a special place. Maybe Nashville, you know?
Maybe Nashville, man.
Let's go.
I know a guy.
I'm retired. Anybody else have anything? This has been great, man. Over here, Mike.
This is tough stuff you're talking about, Ryan. How do you coach a guy that there's just that little bit of not yet inside? Maybe it's shame, maybe whatever it is.
Yeah.
There's just that space where I'm not quite in yet.
Yeah.
He might not even say that to himself, but still, there's that, I hate to say resistance, but there's that,
Yeah.
I'm going to hold out a little longer.
Yeah.
How do you move that person toward that transformation?
let me answer it this way: that what the church, the traditional way of doing church says, you believe like us, you behave like us, and then you can belong. And we set up all sorts of structures around that: catechism, all different ways, different denominations and movements did it different ways. But you believe, you behave like us, then you can become one of us, a full member. You could be baptized or whatever. I think a more faithful way to do it, a better way to do it, is create space for belonging. So and we're serious about that. Like, you don't have to believe like me here. You can still belong. I have people say, "Listen, I'm here, but I don't do the God stuff." That's okay. Really, I mean it. It's
Right.
okay. It's not like, well, just give me time or let me meet you at my office. No, that's nonsense. Create space for belonging and let them know they truly belong with all their questions, all their doubts, all the disillusionment, like truly belong. And then they might start to jump in and start serving. Because in recovery, it's like one of our cornerstones. I love it. How do we stay sober? We do it through acts of service. We serve other people. To keep the gift, we must give the gift away. I believe that. So let people then start behaving differently. And then they might come around to believe in something bigger than them. I think it's a really important thing, believing in something bigger. But you can't force people to believe and then tell them they belong. Because I fundamentally believe that when it comes to the God stuff, when it comes to a greater power, you belong simply because you are. Simply because you breathe, you belong. And there's nothing we do to earn that sense of belonging or earn the right to belong. And even in our greatest mess, we still belong. So do belonging first is what we try to do.
It's a great answer. I like that. Great question. Anybody else before we wrap? I know a lot of you had a long day, and I respect that, but I also don't leave anything on the table that needs to be asked or said. Great, Ryan. Just kind of final thoughts, man. Yeah. Got a bunch of guys here tonight who are doing our best to live in recovery and, find freedom. And what's your final thought? What's your encouragement for these guys?
Yeah, what I would say is 12 years into this thing, I still realize I didn't arrive somewhere and have beat it, and now I've got all this wisdom and answers to drop on you. But there's a beauty that happens in recovery when we stay connected, and I do that through. I still have a sponsor that I meet with on a regular basis. I still go to meetings. I still sponsor other guys in recovery. I walk with other men in recovery, and I believe in that. It transformed my life. And once you shift, everything about recovery is a shift of perspective. We're given an opportunity to see everything different, including ourselves. And once that happens, then you can start seeing the shift towards gratitude. It's all a gift, and we get to do this today. So I still have to remind myself that I get to do this today. I get to have a spiritual path that brings joy rather than shame. I get to do that with other people. Stay connected. That's the biggest message I would leave you with is don't disconnect from other people. Don't disconnect from a spiritual path because it's scary. I think the theme I heard over and over tonight was step into that discomfort. And for some of y'all, like a spiritual path is going to be really uncomfortable. And yet more will be revealed.
That's good. Guys, let's go for Ryan. Good job. Thank you, man. Good stuff.